Breath of the Wild has the best experience for those who play the game. While it's not timeless, it is something worth playing twice. Once in regular mode, and once in master mode. The commentary is going to be on those who think certain items are overpowered. Not counting max stat up recipes for 30 minutes, 3 extra stamina wheels, and hearty foods if you think it. I'll get out the Barbarian armor and the Ancient armor out of the way. The Ancient armor is best used on Guardians. The Barbarian armor makes you a glass cannon from the start and maxed out doesn't have the best defense. Next, I'll bring up that I'm not going to be using effort as an excuse to get what seems overpowered, since not only would it be repetitive and too easy, the sense of worth will make it justified for it. We'll start with the OP weapons list by Austin John Plays. I'll skip the minute 26 mark since there's nothing important.
Number 5. Bomb and Bomb Plus. If you ever tried to take on the Trial of the Sword or played anything in Master Mode, then you know the huge importance of bombs and Bomb Plus. For those of you who don't know, bombs are upgraded at the Hatino Tech Lab for 3 ancient screws at the Guidance Stone after you bring over the Blue Flame, and heck, you could get 3 ancient screws before leaving the Great Plateau. The regular bombs do 12 damage and Bomb Plus is 24, but both inflict the same long-range knockback effect. Also, you can be standing super close to a bomb, and as long as you're holding up your shield, you'll receive no damage and no knockback yourself. However, enemies who are shielding while a bomb goes off aren't as lucky. If you've ever been chased by a horde of enemies, it's a great way to break them up and take them out one by one. If you keep in mind the fact that neither moblins nor bokoblins learned how to swim, that means instant death for them. Then you can find yourself able to clear out a large group of enemies pretty easily.
They sound more like a distraction tool rather than an overpowered weapon. Overpowered weapons should basically be too powerful in whatever it can be, and the only problem is that there's a time limit to how many bombs you can use.
Number 4. Savage Lionel Bows. The Savage Lionel Bow with a base power of 32 launches 3 of whatever bow that you have equipped. And since arrows are a rare commodity in this game, this essentially decreases your usage and increases your chance of hitting your target. That, mixed with the chance that you have a chance to get yourself a Savage Lionel Bow that shoots 5 arrows instead of 3, that only increases your arrow saving. The largest downfall of this bow is its durability rating, which is only 45, which falls short of any of the third-tier bows like the Royal Bow, the Great Eagle Bow, or even the Steel Lazal Bow. Now, I'm going to show you a little trick that can be done with the Savage Lionel Bow that I haven't covered in any other video before to duplicate your arrows. So you could duplicate the amount of arrows you have by making your way to a cooking pot, like this one right here. Set your arrow on fire before you shoot, and then shoot the ground. This allows you to pick up 3 arrows, even though you only shot 1, and there you go. Just repeat that until your bow breaks, and you have yourself a good little inventory. And wow, just when you thought I wasn't going to tell you anything interesting about the Lionel Bow that you didn't already know. Now, if you didn't know that trick, do me a favor and drop a like if you haven't already.
You never brought up why it was overpowered other than what was shown and told. And that's not enough. There is also an attack up and durability up type. Make it even more powerful. Combine that with ancient arrows, and you should be able to obliterate Guardians one multi-shot. Though, ancient arrows are a bit hard to come by. So yeah, limitations.
Number 3, the Royal Guard weapons and the Savage Lionel weapons. Now, this one is hard for me to choose between the two, and it's been an argument over which one is better for quite some time now, so let's break it down. The Savage Lionel sword has a power of 58 with a max enchantment up to 100, and the Royal Guard sword has a power of 48, max enchantment 81. So as the Savage Lionel sword wins. The Savage Lionel spear versus the Royal Guard spear, we're looking at 30 and 32 respectively, with a max of 44 and 57, so the Royal Guard spear wins. The Savage Lionel crusher and the Royal Guard claymore, the ones that you actually only care about, are 78 and 72 respectively, with max rolls of 108 and 116. But the base power aside, the durability of the Royal Guard weapons is just horrible. The Royal Guard sword has the durability rating of 14. That's the same as a spiked Boko club. In fact, all the Lionel weapons are at least 3 times more durable than their Royal Guard counterparts. So factoring all their durabilities and power, the Lionel weapons win by a long shot. Plus, every Blood Moon, you get up to 20 Lionel weapons, if you know how to take down Lionels effectively, but only 4 Royal Guard weapons.
I'm gonna say no to both. Like you said, the Royal Guard weapons only last less than the Savage Lionel weapons, and the Savage Lionel weapons aren't that overpowered if put on an attack boost. With the exception of the Savage one-hand and two-hand Lionel weapons, I feel like those weapons should have been on the list.
Number 2, the Ancient Bow and Twilight Bow. I put the Twilight Bow in here with the Ancient Bow because it's amiibo locked, and a very rare drop from the Smash Zelda amiibo. Like, I amiibo spam for close to 2 hours before getting, that's how rare it is. It was actually 1 hour and 12 minutes for me to get the dang Twilight Bow. So just think of it as an honorable mention here. The Twilight Bow has a base power of 30, durability of 100, and it comes with unlimited light arrows. And you can get an upgraded attack, like mine right here is plus 13, but the magical thing about it is that it has a range of 8,000, which is unheard of. It's actually a longer range than the Bow of Light, you know, the endgame bow that you get at the final scene of the game. Spoiler warning. So if you shoot it in a straight line, it just keeps going in that straight line until it leaves the load distance, and then it just disappears.
The Twilight Bow can only give you light arrows. Once the durability is used up, it will take a while for another.
While the Ancient Bow doesn't have any legendary distance, it does have many other advantages. Well, first, it has a range of 40, which is on par with most of the long-range bows, such as the Swallow and the Fenric Bow. It has a durability of 120, making it the most durable bow in the game, as damn well it should be since it costed me a giant ancient core to buy it. But the really awesome part about it is that its attack is boosted, not only by attack up, but also by ancient proficiency. So if you use any bow with a fully upgraded set of Barbarian armor, its attack increases by 50%. However, the Ancient Bow with full Ancient armor has an 80% boost in attack, so a single non-face shot attack to an enemy with a regular bow does 79 damage, which is more damage than a Savage Lionel Crusher to the face, and that's just unheard of. So I'm breaking the immersion here for a second from the script that I wrote because I just had a crazy idea. What happens if I have a potion of attack up 3 with ancient proficiency with the Ancient Bow? All right, I'm gonna do that real quick. Oh my god, wow. Okay, so just tried this out. If you have a potion of attack up 3, and if you have full ancient armor, and you're using the Ancient Bow, a regular arrow will do 118 damage. Oh boy, just when I thought this thing was great, maybe this doesn't deserve to be number 2. Maybe it deserves to be number 1.
Okay, that's mostly cheating since you're relying on Mighty Food and Ancient Proficiency to make it even more powerful. I can get the long-range aspect, but the weapons alone should tell you why they aren't overpowered.
Number 1, the powered-up Master Sword. I know, you thought it'd be here. Just hear me out. The Master Sword is complete garbage, unless you're in Ganon's castle, or unless you have the DLC. We all know that. But after Trial of the Sword DLC and upgrading the Master Sword to its full power, the fully powered-up Master Sword is a beast. It has a base power of 60 as a one-handed weapon, making it the strongest non-upgraded one-handed sword in the game. It glows blue whenever it's in your hand, and who doesn't love a little RGB in their life? It can take over 200 hits before needing to recharge, making it one of the highest durability weapons in the game. When you have full health, it shoots a beam out like in the original NES game, making it a long-range weapon as well, and it costs $20. Well, the Season Pass DLC is $20, and it's part of the Season Pass DLC, and it takes like 2.5 hours to get it, but the sense of accomplishment that you have after finishing the Master Trial is just amazing. And this is your trophy to show off your accomplishment. And it's always in your inventory, and you'll never be left without a weapon. It's like Fee is always by your side. I just hope that you're not like me and you got so used to not using it before the DLC that now that after you fully upgrade it, you just forgot about it completely.
The Master Sword isn't overpowered. While it is the most durable, its power is increased by 30. Compared to the Savage Lionel weapons, it's just as powerful. Yes, it takes 10 minutes for it to recharge, but the only problem is even if you have the Savage Lionel weapons, it's not going to do much. Next video. It's on DLC. I'll start with the Phantom Armor.
Let's take the Barbarian Set for an example, which is an item that can be obtained in the base game. While worn in its completion, it offers a massive 50% attack buff, which completely changes the way a player approaches all future combat scenarios in this game. But the catch here is that obtaining this gear is no simple task, as the player will have to clear out 3 tough labyrinths that lie in complete opposite sides of the map from one another, which probably won't be done in a blind playthrough until the player is at least a good 50 hours into the game, with the majority of the shrines and divine beasts already completed, which feels like a very fair placement for an item this powerful. But for the players who download the DLC, you can easily obtain a very similar set of clothing, the Phantom Armor, which has the exact same attack buffs and even a higher armor rating than the Barbarian Set, right after you finish the game's tutorial, just by searching the neighboring Hyrule field. By having such a supplementary item like the Phantom Armor available so early on in the game, it messes up a lot of key things that the base experience tried to establish. For one, it ruins the difficulty curve of the whole beginning and mid-game by making all the combat and boss encounters much easier than they are ever intended to be. Being able to boast an armor rating of 24 and a constant attack buff of 50% right after the game's tutorial was not how the game was intended to be played, as it makes all the early combat far easier than it should be, which discourages the use of creativity in battles in favor of just using brute force.
Not entirely true. You do ignore silver and gold enemies in Master Mode. Those will require you to think strategically about your plan, though a fully upgraded Barbarian armor will more likely make things easier in Master Mode. Not to mention the Champion's Ballad from start will have you thinking more strategically, though he'll bring up Majora's Mask.
And secondly, having a powerful item like this thrown into the game so early makes similar and supplementary items feel nearly useless. Early game armor like the Hylian set and the soldier's gear that were once practical in the game's natural progression are now completely pointless to obtain, while late game ones like the Barbarian set are now made to be unsatisfactory, as it only becomes better than the Phantom Armor after several expensive upgrades. And by that point, you're probably so late in the game that most players hardly even care.
The Barbarian armor will take longer if you don't know what you're doing. Farming is sometimes a tedious thing since it requires patience.
Now, it's not to say that every single reward from the DLC is this breaking to the game's overall progression, but there still are several other ones that I would like to discuss that I feel like should have been altered more to be balanced with the core game. The Barbarian armor, in my opinion, just happens to be the most detrimental one, considering that there are no previous requirements to obtain this armor other than just finding its location. But another piece of armor in this DLC that can also be somewhat game-breaking is the Majora's Mask, which, like the Phantom Armor, can be obtained right after beating the game's tutorial and going to Hyrule Field. This mask allows you to disguise yourself amongst just about every single major enemy in this game, which instantly puts the game into an easy/pacifist mode that should not be so easily experienced early on. And just like how the Barbarian set makes other armors like the Hylian and Soldier's Gear useless, the Majora's Mask makes literally every other enemy mask in this game pointless to obtain, as it contains the capabilities of all four of them in one, which is a complete shame, considering that they are all really fun items to try to obtain using Mon in the base game.
That can barely work on Linnell's and doesn't work at all on Keys, Chuchus, and Guardians, so fortunately, it's not overpowered.
The upgraded Master Sword, for example, not only requires the player to first obtain the Master Sword in the base game, but also the completion of the Trial of the Sword, which is an ultimate test of the player's wit and skill in combat that likely won't be able to be beaten until the late game. The other two rewards, the upgraded champion abilities and the Master Cycle, can only be obtained after completing every single dungeon in the base game, and beating the entire champion ballad questline that precedes it. Although I'm glad that all these items get introduced much later in the game's progression, unlike the armors, I still think that there should have been way more prerequisites before obtaining them, as these rewards are so powerful that each one can completely change the dynamic of the game throughout the entire rest of your playthrough. The Enhanced Master Sword, for example, not only has an attack output of 60, but also lasts a total of 188 hits, with only a mere 10-minute recharge window. This means that roughly 70 to 80% of all future combat scenarios will be handled exclusively with the Master Sword, which completely throws off the past established combat loop of cycling between new and unique weapons to take down enemies, as now that's only restricted to the small amount of time when the sword needs to recharge. Considering that Breath of the Wild was built around this weapon swapping system, having another system to almost completely override it deteriorates the variety that once made this game's combat so fun.
You kind of ignore Guardians, which requires either the Hylian Shield or Ancient Arrows. Not all of them require the Master Sword to take them down. Now granted you brought up percentages, but you could have brought up why this was the case.
Similar situation with the game's Master Cycle. Although it's really fun to ride around Hyrule in an ancient dirt bike, it practically replaces the entire horse and stable system that is a very key element to the transportation of this game. Despite horses still having some advantages, like the ability to autopilot amongst major roads and the lack of needing to be fueled, the Master Cycle is better in almost every other way. It can overcome some of the game's roughest terrains, can be spawned just about anywhere at any time, and has no way of being killed off like horses can. I will give the developers some credit on this one though, as the DLC also added in the Ancient Horse Armor, that allowed horses to stand a chance against the bike by making them faster and allowing them to teleport to you. But there are still far more advantages to the bike, where the player will more often than not still choose it over the horses.
Yeah, about that. The only way you can refuel the tank quickly is with ancient parts, not counting the ancient cores. I can't say about the giant ancient core though, since I save those for ancient gear. If you're planning on farming, then that would be good. Even then, the bike is used in driving rough terrain. Therefore, it's not overpowered. I'll end this right since he's just giving his final thoughts. My final thoughts: an op item is basically a game breaker, which can be abused. If it was a game breaker, then it would be too easy. They neglect Master Mode, which makes it harder. My advice: if you're going to make claims like that, do your research. Like, comment, share the video, subscribe, and click on the bell to get notified for more of my work. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter, Tumblr, and Discord for Q&A, polls, and announcements.